I've made smoked turkey quite a few times on this channel, and that is because it's probably my favorite of the smoked meats that I cook regularly, and particularly if it's brined, whether it's pre-brined or you brine it yourself. But a comment I hear a lot from people is that they just don't have the space to brine it. Wet brining it is the way I normally do, which is to submerge the turkey breast into some salt water and allow it to brine overnight. You need to keep it in the fridge. A lot of people don't have that kind of fridge space, especially around times like Thanksgiving and Christmas where fridges are normally packed with other stuff. And that's definitely an issue that I've had in the past when I've done pop-ups and my fridge is just crammed. I don't always have space for a whole Yeti or a big Cambro food storage container to do a full wet brine. And quite often I don't have a whole shelf free to do a dry brine, which would be to salt the meat and put it onto a rack into the fridge. So what I started doing was a bit of a hybrid between the two, and it meant that as long as I had space for the turkey breast itself in the fridge, I didn't need to worry. So I'm going to show you how we do that. So what we have here is a boneless skin on turkey breast from my local butcher. I've actually got 2 of them today, but I'll show you one as an example. And I love using my local butcher, but the nature of what they do, the meats I get from them are not very consistent. So hopefully this isn't all mangled. And also this is quite a small turkey breast compared to the ones that I usually do. So I would need quite a small container for this, but principle still applies regardless of how big the turkey is. So depending on how you're going to cook this, you might want to leave the skin on. I personally don't like to leave the skin on, but you could follow the same process and leave it on. And then we've got a little turkey breast. Just going to cut this fat off, make sure that nothing's hanging off too bad. I'm going to take this little tender off and treat this separately. And then we've got a little turkey breast. And to get this process started, what we need to do first is weigh this. So using my set of scales and a bowl, we'll weigh this up because we're going to need to calculate the right amount of salt needed to fully brine this turkey all the way through. Make sure it's not too salty, make sure it's not undersalted. So we'll weigh that up, and that is 972 grams. So we need to work out what 1.5% of 972 grams is in salt, and that's about 14.58 grams. I'll call it 15 grams. Take my more accurate coffee scales and go in with 15 grams of the cheapest salt that I can find. Definitely not wasting my good expensive salt for this. And all we're going to do is just make sure that this is evenly salted, and I really want to make sure that I use all of this salt, otherwise our calculations would be pointless. And want to make sure that it's nice and even. And it's going to seem like a lot, but this isn't just salt in the exterior. The whole point of this is that this salt's going to draw out some moisture, and then it's going to be reabsorbed back deep within the muscle itself. So we're seasoning not just the outside, but all the way through. Make sure you don't leave any salt behind. Now that's salted, this is where we go and do something slightly different from a regular dry brine. And the thing that's going to mean that we can just chuck this into the fridge however we want. And that is to take a good quality Ziploc bag, get this turkey breast in there pretty quickly. We'll get that zipped up, get as much of this air out as possible, as we want to make sure that any liquid that gets drawn out of here is touching the breast itself, and that's looking pretty good. It's almost vacuum sealed. You could vacuum seal it if you have something like the WeVac chamber vacuum sealer like I have, but I wanted this to appear like it was accessible to everyone, which it is. You don't need a vacuum sealer, you could just use a Ziploc bag. And now we've got a turkey breast that's been perfectly salted, and you can just chuck this into the fridge any way you want. And as long as this seam is upright, you don't need to worry about this leaking. You don't need to worry about space for a container and gallons or liters and liters of water taking up a load of space, or even a whole rack in your fridge being taken up dry brining this. So this isn't discovery of the century, obviously, but I was surprised at the amount of people that hadn't thought about doing this. So this is how I do it when I want to save space. So we'll get the other one weighed up and salted. So there we've got 2 pretty small turkey breasts, to be honest. Usually these are much bigger, perfectly salted. And if you're one of these people that feel like you don't have to weigh things out to get the perfect salt percentage, you don't need to. I like to be accurate and know it's going to be good every time. And I'm also not going to go into all of the benefits of brining, because if you're watching this video, you probably already know what those are, but you're going to get much more flavoursome, much more juicy, more tender turkey if you brine it, so it's definitely recommended. So these can just get chucked into the fridge. I'll find some little spaces I can lodge them in at. In terms of how long, in my opinion, at a 1.5% salinity on these, 48 hours delivers the best results. You could go as little as 24. Ideally, you wouldn't go any less than that. 48 hours, in my opinion, is about as far as you can push it before things maybe start to get a little bit mushy, but you get the salt penetration all the way to the center, or mostly to the center. So we'll see these in 48 hours. 48 hours later, these turkeys are brined. So these should be nice and seasoned all the way through. That additional salt is also going to break down some of the muscle fibers, so this shouldn't push out as much juice during the cook. So we'll get them seasoned up and onto the pit. And also I want to pay a little bit of attention to the grain structure on this. A lot of people don't really care for the grain structure on a turkey, but hopefully you can see the lines going this way. And I like to cut against the grain, even on a turkey breast. Not really so much for texture, but more about appearance. You get a nice flush white slice if you go against the grain, compared to a slightly more stringy looking slice if you go with the grain. So I'm going to take a mental note of the grain structure on these two. And in terms of seasoning, I'm going to go for two different approaches today. The first one, I'm going to go with some straight up 16 mesh black pepper. Keep it pretty classic, Texas style turkey breast. It's already salted, no need to add salt, obviously. That's the whole point of this video. And just go on with a nice even coating of that. Basically everywhere there isn't black pepper should be nice and golden, and that will look good. On the second one, I'm still gonna go with a light amount of black pepper because I like it for visuals as well as flavor. But I'm also gonna go on with this Cajun steak rub. This is by Fire and Smoke Society. Picked this up from Pro Smoke here in the UK, and it is really, really good. I love a Cajun flavor on my turkey. I'm not usually one for pre-made rubs, but this works really, really well. Gonna give a nice extra bit of color as well. Something slightly different on the flavor than just salt and pepper. And I'm not gonna go too heavy with that, because obviously this rub has salt in it. This turkey breast is brined. But remember, most of this salt has been absorbed into this turkey breast over the last 48 hours. So all that salt isn't living on the surface. So we're not really doubling up the salt on the surface as much as you'd think we would be. So these relatively small turkey breasts are ready to go. We're gonna go outside and fire up the Traeger. We're gonna be running some oak pellets, and we're also gonna be firing up the smoke tube. I feel like that's the only way you get really good smoke flavor on the pellet grill. And today I'm just using it for convenience more than anything. But obviously you could cook this on any kind of pit you wanted. So I'm gonna run about 200 Fahrenheit for the first hour or so to get some good smoke flavor and good color. And then gonna kick it up to around 275, 300-ish, and bring these up to a nice internal temperature of 145 Fahrenheit. And I'll explain more on that when we get there. So it is absolutely torrential rain outside, and I don't really have a way of taking my camera out and it not getting completely drenched. So a quick update on where we're at. The turkey breasts have been smoking for about 4 hours total. That first hour was at 165 Fahrenheit, and then I kicked it up to 275 for another 3 hours, and that got us to an internal temperature of 150 Fahrenheit on the turkey breasts. So if you want your turkey breast to be perfectly safe to eat immediately, you need to hit 165 Fahrenheit. But because as meat gets hot, just like a steak or a pork chop or any other kind of meat, the more juices you're likely to lose. So you can achieve the same level of bacterial reduction at 150 Fahrenheit, providing you cook it to 150 and keep it there for a minimum of 4 minutes. So I've been spot checking these turkey breasts for the last 20 minutes or so, watching them creep up to 150. Once they hit 150, I looked at my phone, made note of the time, went away, came back about 6 or 7 minutes later, checked them, and they're at 152. So that tells me they've been at a minimum of 150 Fahrenheit for at least 4 minutes, and therefore they are just as safe to eat had we taken them to 165. The benefit of that is they should be juicier. So they're ready to come in. And I've got some foil here, and onto the foil we're going to go down with some butter, salted or unsalted. I personally don't think it really matters. And we've got our just peppered turkey breast, so this has just been brined with some pepper. Presentation side down on top of the butter. Get this wrapped up. Butter, that Cajun rub turkey breast. Again, presentation side down. Wrap it up really tight, and these are ready to go. I like to let them sit in this foil wrap with the butter for a good 20 minutes or so. You could put them into the warming oven or into an oven just to help that butter melt, and you'll be left with a nice buttery bath at the bottom that you could dip your slices in and generally help to keep the turkey breast moist. So in my case, I'm just gonna set these on the side for about 20 minutes or so, and the residual heat from the turkey will melt that butter. So bringing these back in about 30 minutes later or so. So what we should have is some really glossy, smoky looking turkey. I think that looks really good. And a little parcel of butter to dip it in. So we're gonna give this a slice. And what we've got is some really nice, juicy turkey. You can see the brine has taken effect. That's why it looks nice and flat rather than feathery. On the fresh cut, really nice and juicy. All that brine has helped to keep all that liquid in, and that's exactly what we want. We can take these slices and hold them in this butter. Taste one. Perfectly seasoned all the way to the middle. There's not a single millimeter of that doesn't have some salinity. A little dip in that butter. So that was the Cajun rub one. If you can get your hands on that rub, I definitely recommend it for turkey. And then we've got our regular, just salt and pepper turkey breast. All that butter dripping off. Don't want to waste that. That brine has definitely helped to hold on to some of those juices. That really reminds me of Terry Black's turkey. Looks great. Nice sheen to it. Have a little taste. Really not a bad smoke flavour for a pellet as well. Poultry likes to take on a lot of smoke flavour, so I'm not too worried about under smoking this on a pellet grill. Dip it in that butter is so good. Perfect saltiness all the way through. Honestly, whether you dry brine it, put it in a little Ziploc or into a fully submerged bath, just definitely brine it if it's not already brined. You honestly can't beat it. Really happy with how much juice is holding in. Overall, pretty good cook. I like that method. I love turkey. Somewhere between 1.5 and 2% brine in a bag in the fridge. 48 hours, you're gonna have yourself some perfect smoked turkey. Yeah, not much more to say on that. Super simple. Anyone can do it. You don't need a load of space. That's the whole point of this video. And smoked turkey is genuinely a severely underrated barbecue cut. So if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. It really does help me out. And let me know if this helped in any way at all. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for another video.